To the outside world, Clara Sterling was the luckiest woman in the city. Wrapped in silk and draped in the legendary sterling emeralds, she stood by her husband's side at their 5th anniversary gala. She thought the heat in Julian's eyes was love. She didn't realize it was the cold fire of a predator about to strike. Julian Black, the billionaire whose name was whispered with both fear and envy, stepped to the podium. He didn't look at his wife. He looked at the cameras. 5 years is a long time for a contract, he announced, his voice like ice. And tonight, that contract officially expires. The doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. A woman half Clara's age, dressed in white, the color of a bride, walked toward the stage. Julian reached out a hand, not to the woman who had built his empire with him, but to the stranger. "Meet the new face of the Sterling legacy," he declared, "and the new mistress of my home." As the crowd watched in stunned silence, security moved in. Clara wasn't just being replaced, she was being erased. But Julian made one fatal mistake. He thought Clara was just a trophy he could discard. He forgot that she was the one who knew where all the bodies were buried. Would you stay silent if the man you love did this to you? Or would you burn his world down? Stick around, because Clara's about to show Julian that a woman with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous person in the room. The grand ballroom of the Black Sterling estate was a sea of shimmering silk, expensive cologne, and the hushed murmurs of the world's most powerful people. To anyone looking in from the outside, Clara Sterling was the woman who had it all. She stood at the center of the room, her hand resting lightly on the arm of Julian Black, the man the media called the Ice King of Wall Street. Clara looked at her reflection in the towering gilded mirrors. She was 34, elegant, and had spent the last 5 years of her life transforming Julian from a ruthless corporate raider into a polished titan of industry. She was his advisor, his strategist, and his wife. Tonight was their 5th anniversary, and the air was thick with the scent of 5,000 white lilies, Julian's favorite. "You look tense, Clara," Julian whispered, his voice a low, gravelly baritone that used to make her heart flutter. Now it just made her skin prickle. He didn't look at her. He was scanning the room, his eyes cold and predatory. "It's a big night, Julian," she replied, smoothing the front of her bespoke midnight blue gown. 5 years is a milestone. The board is watching. The press is waiting for your speech." Julian gave a thin, humorless smile. "Oh, I have a speech, Clara. One that no one in this room will ever forget." There was something in his tone, a sharp, jagged edge that made Clara's stomach flip. She thought back to the early days. When they first married, Julian was a man of fire. He had pursued her with a relentless passion, promising her a life of shared power. But slowly the fire had turned to ice. Over the last year, the gilded cage had become real. He had moved her office out of the headquarters and into the estate. He had replaced her staff with his own. He had started protecting her by isolating her. As the clock struck 9, Julian stepped toward the podium. The orchestra faded into a haunting silence. The elite of New York froze, glasses of vintage cristal poised at their lips. 5 years ago, Julian began, his voice booming through the crystal chandeliers, "I made a vow. I promised to build a legacy that would last for generations. I promised that the name Sterling Black would be synonymous with absolute power." Clara smiled, waiting for him to gesture for her to join him. She took a step forward, ready to take her place as the loyal partner. "But a legacy is only as strong as its foundation," Julian's voice turned ice cold. "And sometimes, to build a skyscraper, you have to tear down the old, crumbling structure that stands in your way. Tonight, I am announcing more than just an anniversary. I am announcing the dissolution of the Black Sterling contract." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. The contract? He meant their marriage. "Clara has been a functional transition," Julian continued, looking directly at her now with eyes that held zero warmth. "But she was never the destination. She was the bridge. And tonight, I've reached the other side." The massive oak doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. A young woman, barely 22, walked down the center aisle. She was dressed in a white lace gown, a wedding dress. Around her neck sat the sterling emeralds, the family heirlooms that Julian told Clara were being cleaned in London. The girl reached the stage, and Julian did something he hadn't done to Clara in years. He reached out, took her hand, and kissed it with genuine reverence. "Everyone," Julian announced, his voice filled with a cruel triumph. "Meet Lydia, the future of the Black Empire. The woman who will actually give me the heirs Clara was, too, focused to provide." The humiliation hit Clara like a physical blow. The whispers started immediately, sharp, jagged shards of gossip. "Did you hear? He's replacing her right here? How pathetic." Clara stood frozen. She looked at the woman who had replaced her, a girl who looked like a porcelain doll with no idea of the monster she was holding hands with. Clara looked at Julian, hoping to see a shred of regret. There was none, only the smug satisfaction of a man who thought he had already won. "Julian," Clara whispered, her voice trembling but audible in the silent room. "What is this?" Julian didn't even turn his head. He signaled to the men standing by the exit. "Security will see you out, Clara. Your personal belongings have already been moved to a suite at the airport motel. Don't make a scene. It's bad for the brand." Two massive men in black suits appeared at Clara's sides. One of them placed a hand on her elbow. It wasn't a gentle touch. It was a warning. "Mrs. Sterling," the guard said, "it's time to go." As she was led through the crowd, Clara saw the faces of people she had helped, people she had hosted, people she had considered friends. They all looked away. In the world of billionaires, loyalty followed the money, and the money was with Julian. She was marched out of the ballroom, through the grand foyer, and pushed out onto the gravel driveway. A light, freezing rain began to fall, soaking into her expensive silk gown. Her car was gone. Her driver was gone. All that remained was a single black suitcase sitting on the wet pavement. The heavy front doors of the estate groaned shut, the sound of the locks clicking into place echoing like a gunshot in the night. Clara stood in the rain, the cold seeping into her bones. She was homeless. She was penniless. Julian had made sure all their accounts were in his name for tax purposes. She was the laughingstock of the elite world. She walked over to the suitcase, her heels clicking on the wet stones. She expected to find her clothes shredded or her jewelry gone, but when she popped the latches, she didn't find clothes. Inside the suitcase was a single, weathered leather folder and a small, burner cell phone. Clara opened the folder. Her eyes widened as she scanned the documents. These weren't divorce papers. They were internal ledgers from Julian's secret offshore accounts, accounts she wasn't supposed to know existed. And tucked between the pages was a photograph. It was a picture of Julian, 10 years ago, standing next to a man Clara recognized instantly, a man who was supposedly dead. The burner phone in the suitcase buzzed, an unknown number. Clara shook as she pressed the phone to her ear. "Hello? He thinks he destroyed you," a deep, distorted voice said on the other end. "But he just gave you the only weapon that can kill him. Do you want to cry, Clara? Or do you want to take back your life?" Clara looked back at the glowing windows of the ballroom, where the music had started up again. She could see Julian's silhouette through the glass, laughing with his new bride. Clara wiped a stray tear from her cheek, her eyes turning from a soft brown to a hard, cold flint. "I don't want to cry," Clara said, her voice dropping an octave. "I want him to watch everything he loves turn to ash." "Good," the voice replied. "Check the lining of the suitcase. There's a key to a locker at the Grand Central Station. Inside is the truth about Julian's first wife, the one he told you died in a car accident." The line went dead. Clara looked at the folder in her lap. Julian Black thought he was playing a game of chess. He thought he had taken her queen. But he forgot one thing. Clara was the one who taught him how to play. The Grand Horizon Motel was a cruel joke of a name. It was a squat, neon-flickering building on the edge of the industrial district, smelling of stale cigarettes and cheap bleach. Clara sat on the edge of a bed with thin, scratchy sheets, her midnight blue silk gown looking like a fallen star in a gutter. Just 3 hours ago, she was the queen of Manhattan. Now she was a woman with a burner phone and a folder of secrets. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Julian's face, the way he looked at that young girl, Lydia. It wasn't just lust. It was the look of a man who had successfully swapped a complex, sentient human being for his shiny new toy. But as she gripped the leather folder, Clara realized Julian had made a tactical error. He assumed that because he had stripped her of her credit cards and her home, he had stripped her of her mind. At 4 a.m., the burner phone vibrated. A single text. The clock is ticking. Julian's lawyers are already filing the mental instability clause. Grand Central, locker 412. Go now. Clara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the broken heater in the room. The mental instability clause, a classic Julian Black move. He wouldn't just divorce her. He would gaslight the world into believing she had lost her mind so he could keep every cent of her shares in the company. By 5:30 a.m., Clara was standing in the cavernous silence of Grand Central Terminal. She had changed into the only sensible thing in her suitcase, a black trench coat and flat shoes she had kept for travel. She looked like a shadow among the early morning commuters. Locker 412 opened with a rusty groan. Inside sat a small vintage vanity case. It was covered in dust, the initials EV embossed in fading gold on the lid. Clara took the case to a secluded bench. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside wasn't money or jewelry. It was a diary, a series of medical records, and a stack of photographs. The woman in the photos was breathtaking, ethereal, with wide, haunting eyes. Eleanor Vance, Julian's first wife. The woman Julian told Clara had died in a tragic car accident in the Swiss Alps before they ever met. Julian had described her as the great tragedy of his life, the wound that only Clara had been able to heal. Clara flipped through the diary. The handwriting started elegant and controlled, but as the pages turned, it became frantic, jagged. He's watching the phones. He says the shadows in the hallway are my imagination, but I saw him. He's talking to the doctors about treatments. I'm not sick, I'm just in his way. Clara's breath hitched. This wasn't the diary of a woman who died in a car accident. This was the diary of a woman being hunted by her own husband. She flipped to the final entry, dated 2 weeks before Eleanor's death. If anyone finds this, I am at the St. Jude's Sanatorium. He told the world I died. He told the world I was gone. But I am buried alive in a room with no windows. Julian doesn't kill what he hates. He just erases it. The realization hit Clara like a physical blow. Julian hadn't just lied about his past. He had built his current empire on the erasure of the woman who came before her. And now the pattern was repeating. Lydia wasn't just a replacement, she was the new distraction, while Julian prepared to erase Clara. She's still there, you know. Clara jumped, the diary slipping from her fingers. Standing a few feet away was a man in a rumpled suit, holding a paper cup of steaming coffee. He looked tired, his eyes etched with years of regret. "Who are you?" Clara whispered, clutching the vanity case to her chest. "I'm the man Julian paid to drive that car in the Alps," the man said, his voice a gravelly rasp. "I'm the man who watched him walk away from a burning wreck that didn't have a body in it. My name is Detective Miller, or I used to be a detective, before Julian Black bought my badge and turned it into scrap metal." Miller sat down next to her, not looking at her, but at the grand clock in the center of the station. "I've been waiting 5 years for you to get kicked out, Clara. I knew the moment he married you that you had an expiration date. Julian doesn't do forever. He does until you know too much." "Why help me now?" Clara asked, her voice hardening. "You helped him hide a woman. You helped him destroy a life." "Because I'm dying," Miller said simply, gesturing to his frail frame. "And I don't want to meet my maker with Eleanor Vance's ghost on my shoulders. Julian is moving her, Clara. Now that he's disposing of you, he's cleaning up all the loose ends. He's closing St. Jude's. In 48 hours, Eleanor Vance really will disappear." Clara's mind raced. This was the toxic core of Julian Black. He didn't just want power, he wanted total control over the narrative of reality. He wanted to be the grieving widower, the triumphant CEO, and the loving husband all at once, even if it meant destroying everyone in his path. "If I go to the police," Clara started. "Julian is the police," Miller interrupted. "He's the mayor's biggest donor. He's the governor's golfing buddy. You go to the authorities, and you'll find yourself in the bed next to Eleanor before sunset." Clara looked down at the diary. She thought of Julian's smug face at the gala, the way he had dismissed her like a piece of trash. A slow, cold rage began to replace her fear. I don't need the police, Clara said, her voice steady. Julian's power comes from his reputation. He's the Ice King. Stable, predictable, perfect. If the world sees the monster behind the mask, the board of directors will drop him in a heartbeat. The stock will crater. He'll lose the one thing he actually loves, his empire. And how do you plan to do that? Miller asked. You're a ghost, Clara. You have no money, no home, and your husband is about to tell the world you've had a nervous breakdown. Clara stood up, pulling her trench coat tight. She remembered the offshore ledgers in the suitcase. Julian thought she was just a strategist for his business. He forgot she was the one who had set up the shell companies he used to hide his cleaning fees. Julian thinks he's the only one who can play the villain, Clara said, a dark smile playing on her lips. But he forgot that I spent 5 years watching him. I know his passwords, I know his patterns, and I know exactly where he keeps his heart, in his bank account. Clara didn't go back to the motel. Instead, she used the last of the cash in her pocket to buy a burner laptop from a 24-hour electronics shop. She sat in a crowded diner, the smell of grease and coffee surrounding her, and began to type. She didn't look for money. She looked for access. By 10:28 a.m., she had bypassed the security of Black Enterprise's internal server. She watched in real time as Julian's PR team drafted a press release. Mrs. Clara Sterling seeking private treatment for exhaustion and mental health struggles. The family asked for privacy during this difficult time. Not today, Julian, she whispered. She didn't delete the press release. Instead, she added a single hidden attachment to the email blast that was set to go out to every major news outlet in the country. It was a digital copy of Eleanor Vance's death certificate, the one signed by Miller, side by side with a time-stamped photo of Eleanor at St. Jude's from only a week ago. She hit save. Now she just had to wait for the trigger. But as she logged off, she saw a new file appear on Julian's personal drive. It was labeled Lydia, Pre-Nuptial Trust. She opened it and felt a fresh wave of nausea. Julian wasn't just marrying Lydia for her youth. The documents showed that Lydia was the daughter of the one man Julian couldn't buy, the head of the European Regulatory Commission. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a merger. Julian was using a 22-year-old girl to bypass international law and expand his reach into the global market. Suddenly, the burner phone rang. It wasn't Miller. It wasn't the mysterious voice. It was Julian. Clara, his voice was smooth, as if the night before had never happened. I see you've been busy on the servers. I expected more from you. Did you really think I wouldn't notice a login from a diner in Queens? Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. You can't hide what you did to Eleanor, Julian. The world is going to see. The world sees what I tell them to see, Julian replied, his tone chillingly calm. Check the news, Clara, and then check your coat pocket. Clara reached into her trench coat pocket. Her fingers brushed against something small and cold, a syringe. She gasped, dropping the phone. She looked around the diner. 2 men in nondescript gray suits were standing by the door. One was checking his watch. The other was looking directly at her. You're not going to a motel, Clara. Julian's voice echoed from the phone on the table. You're going to a reunion. Eleanor has been so lonely. The air in the diner turned to ice. Clara looked at the syringe in her hand, then at the 2 men in gray suits closing in. Julian's voice still echoed from the burner phone on the table, a smooth, terrifying purr of absolute confidence. He truly believed he had won. He believed Clara was just another loose end to be tied up and tucked away in a dark room. But Julian Black had spent 5 years teaching Clara how to be a shark. He just never expected her to bite him. As the first man reached for her arm, Clara didn't scream. She didn't plead. Instead, she grabbed the pot of scalding coffee from the counter and flung it with surgical precision into his face. The man let out a guttural howl, clutching his eyes. In the chaos, Clara didn't run for the front door. She knew the second man was blocking it. Instead, she dived behind the counter, grabbed the heavy industrial meat cleaver from the prep station, and smashed the glass of the side window. She scrambled through the jagged frame, the cold night air hitting her lungs like a shot of adrenaline. She didn't look back. She knew the city better than Julian's thugs did. She disappeared into the maze of the industrial district, her heart thundering a rhythmic war cry. Not today, not ever again. Clara knew she couldn't stay in the shadows forever. She needed a stage, and she knew exactly where Julian would be, the Black Sterling Metropolitan Gala. It was the night he was set to officially sign the merger with Lydia's father, the night he would consolidate his power and become untouchable. She reached Detective Miller at a payphone. "I have the files," Clara said, her voice trembling but hard. "But I need more than files. I need the body, Miller. I need Eleanor." "It's a suicide mission, Clara," Miller rasped. "St. Jude's is a fortress. Julian has it locked down." "Julian has it locked down with money," Clara countered. "But I'm the one who's been signing the checks for the security firm for 3 years. I know the override codes, I know the shift changes, and I know that the guards there are underpaid and tired of Julian's secrets." For the next 12 hours, Clara worked with the cold efficiency of a woman who had already died once. She used the burner laptop to redirect a series of bonus payments from Julian's offshore accounts to the private security guards at St. Jude's. The memo on the wire transfer was simple. "Take the night off. Watch the news." The St. Jude's Sanatorium was a gray monolith on the edge of the Hudson. When Clara arrived, the gates were open. The guards were gone. She found Eleanor Vance in room 402. The room was beautiful, filled with silk and flowers, but the windows were made of reinforced plexiglass that didn't open. Eleanor sat in a rocking chair, her eyes fixed on the river. She looked like a ghost that had forgotten how to haunt. "Eleanor," Clara whispered. The woman turned. She looked at Clara's midnight blue dress, torn and stained, and then at her eyes. "Is he dead?" Eleanor asked, her voice like dry leaves. "No," Clara said, reaching out a hand. "But by the end of tonight, he's going to wish he was." The Metropolitan Gala was the height of luxury. Julian Black stood on the grand staircase, Lydia on his arm. Lydia looked radiant in a dress that cost more than a suburban home, though her eyes looked slightly glazed, as if the reality of being Julian's merger was beginning to sink in. "To the future," Julian announced, raising a glass of blue-labeled scotch. Lydia's father, the commissioner, smiled and prepared to sign the merger documents on the podium. "Stop!" The word wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a mountain. The crowd parted. Clara Sterling walked down the center of the ballroom. She wasn't wearing silk. She was wearing her torn trench coat, her hair damp from the rain, her face pale and set in stone. "Clara," Julian said, his eyes narrowing into deadly slits. He signaled to his security. "I told the press you were unwell. Please, let's get you to the ambulance." "I'm not the one who's sick, Julian," Clara said, stepping into the light of the chandeliers. "And I'm not the one who's going to be erased tonight." She gestured to the massive projection screen behind the podium, the one meant to show the merger highlights. Suddenly, the screen flickered to life. It wasn't a corporate logo. It was a live feed from the ballroom's own security cameras, but with an overlay of documents, bank transfers, medical records, and the diary of a dead woman. "You told the world Eleanor Vance died in the Alps," Clara's voice rang out, amplified by the microphone she had hacked into. "You told me you were a widower. You told the board of directors that you were a man of integrity." "Clara, enough!" Julian stepped forward, his face turning a dark, bruised purple. "But Eleanor Vance didn't die," Clara continued. "She was just misplaced." The heavy oak doors of the ballroom opened. Detective Miller walked in, and beside him, leaning on his arm, was Eleanor Vance. A silence so profound fell over the room that you could hear the wax dripping from the candles. The commissioner dropped his pen. Lydia let go of Julian's arm as if it were made of burning coal. Julian looked at Eleanor. For the first time in his life, the Ice King looked afraid. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. "Julian," Eleanor said, her voice small but clear in the silence. "You forgot to lock the door." The fallout was instantaneous. The commissioner, realizing his daughter was being married off to a man who kidnapped his previous wives, tore the merger papers in half. The press, who had been invited for a celebration, began a feeding frenzy. Julian's security tried to intervene, but Clara had already sent the mental instability files, the ones Julian had drafted against her, to every major news outlet, but with Julian's own medical history attached. She had found his private records, the sociopathy diagnosis he had paid millions to hide. "You're finished, Julian," Clara said, standing inches from him. "The board has already held an emergency vote. Your shares are being frozen. The police are in the lobby, and the best part? I used your own disposal fund to pay for Eleanor's legal team. You're going to spend the rest of your life in a room with no windows. Let's see how you like the gilded cage." Julian reached out, his fingers trembling, trying to grab her throat. "I made you," he hissed. "You were nothing." Clara stepped back, a look of pure, cold pity on her face. "No, Julian, you didn't make me. You just gave me the tools to destroy you. Thank you for the 5 years of lessons. They were expensive, but they were worth it." As the police led Julian Black out in handcuffs, past the elite who were already erasing his name from their contact lists, Clara stood at the center of the ballroom. She wasn't the billionaire's wife anymore. She was Clara Sterling, and she was finally free. Thank you for watching, like, comment, subscribe, and share. See you in the next video.